In this week's episode, I'm joined by Vivian Acquah, she, her, certified DEI trainer and coach. This week, we're talking about Spotify's remote work win, Jessica Campbell smashing NHL barriers, changing tables, changing lives, and more. Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. Let's get started. Vivian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on this show, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And you are coming to us from the Netherlands. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Correct.
So, and you do DEI work primarily overseas. I'm in Chicago, USA. So can you talk to me a little bit about some of the differences that you've seen in working with your global clients versus the international differences?
I mean, it's important to realize that now that the world is becoming more mixed, right? We have people from all over the place, that it's important to think about all the different cultures that your company serves, right? So when I'm being hired by my US clients, they love the fact that I have the European lens, that I can share a different narrative, but also address the challenges from the European perspective as well. And when I talk to my European clients, they love the fact that I bring in some of the US data, some of the US facts, but also bring in the European facts as well, because what's happening in the US doesn't always mean that it's happening here or it's happening in the same way, right? So you want to localize it. So that's often, I would say that's my unique selling point for them hiring me. Realizing also there's a lot happening in the US right now with the election and also other things that are happening that it stirs the pot when it comes to US clients as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And are you sort of noticing different sort of focus areas, whether your client is US based or not?
I mean, the clients from the US are more focused on everything that has to do with DEI. Some of them want to shy away or want me to rebrand the program. So it is DEI, but I don't call it DEI. And there are clients out there that really want to still honor DEI from that lens, so to support them. And here in Europe, the equity part, it's not a part that is often being addressed. So it's my mission, or I'm on a mission to address it more often, to put the E where it belongs between diversity and inclusion, so that we honor equity, not equality, but equity.
Yeah, I think that we're starting to see some equity pullback here as well, and deeper focus on inclusion for sure.
Yeah, I heard that and I saw that battle, and I don't understand how you can get inclusion without equity. I don't understand that.
Not authentic inclusion anyway.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wrote a little bit about this in my 5 Things newsletter this week, because I presented an inclusive leadership session for government officials. And so there was this discussion that came up about authenticity and psychological safety at their workplace. And these folks were mostly Gen X and above. And like me, they weren't taught to share their feelings. Plus, they work in government. But the generations that they're managing, millennials and Gen Z, they expect more authenticity and they expect more connectedness. So I've personally, anyone who's read or listened knows that I've gotten over my reluctance to talk about my feelings. But the way I do it is I share stuff that's authentic, but no longer raw, right? And
Yeah.
so by doing so, it becomes a little bit of a strategy to invite people to laugh and not be intimidated and open themselves up to learn when I speak. And so I was sort of trying to invite people to find the line about sharing and oversharing in the workplace.
Yeah.
What's sort of been your experience with that?
I mean, my experience are I'm going to share two different scenarios. So when I do my normal training, right? So the offline or online training, it depends on how well they know me. So I start with I share my own vulnerability. I share my personal story. So, in the hope that I'm able to unlock their personal stories, right?
Mhm.
I see some safeguarding. I see some people tiptoeing around, okay, am I safe to share it? But eventually they share it. And I
Yeah.
also put measurements in place that to me, it's not about who's sharing what, but it's more about the different stories that they are able to share or more about the questions that they want to ask. So I often use a tool where I don't ask participants about their names. I want them to share whatever they feel comfortable so that they feel safe. And when we are in a smaller setting, of course, then I will open up the floor for people to share it face to face. And if they don't feel comfortable yet, they can always share it in a one-on-one or through email or through other tools as well. And on the other hand, I use virtual reality. It's a way to immerse people into experiencing exclusion in a safe way
Yeah.
where they're able to tap into microaggression to experience good intentions gone bad, but also
Mhm.
experience how unconscious bias is working where you unconsciously are excluding somebody whilst you are activating your good intention, right? Because often people cannot really grasp how it feels to be excluded, especially when you are, let's say everybody has privileges, but some
Mhm.
people have more privileges than the rest. And if you don't experience any exclusion or a minor portion of exclusion, then you cannot address people like, okay, if I can do it, you can do it, right? Because you don't know how heavy my suitcase is, right? So when I activate the virtual reality, oftentimes people are able to dive in deeper so
Mhm.
much sooner than when I would do with a traditional training. So it
Yeah.
depends on the setting, it depends on the topic that I'm addressing, right? So there are different scenarios, neurodiversity. I have sexism, racism. I have things that are happening in the meeting as well. So different things, and also know that the experiences that I use as VR experiences are real experiences. So it's not
Yeah.
avatar because not everybody is a gamer, and I want to make sure that people are connecting with the topic, that they can relate to that topic or can identify to that topic as well. Yeah.
I love that. It's such a powerful way to build
Hmm.
empathy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the
Definitely.
perspective taking,
Yeah.
and I think that we often don't challenge ourselves in that
Mm.
way because
No.
we'd rather just stick with what's comfortable, safe, familiar, right? And so
True. True.
perspective taking through virtual reality is awesome, really cool.
Yeah, and also you get a chance to step on somebody's toes without really hurting them and
Mhm.
still experience how it makes the other person feel so that you can practice in a safe environment without using somebody else or misusing somebody or mistreating somebody else.
That's right. All
Yeah.
right. I love it. Okay, well, let's move into this week's good vibes. The first
Hmm.
story this week comes from here in the US. Thanks to the Secure Act 2.0, employers can now match student loan payments with 401k contributions, even if those employees are not adding to their retirement account. So, big companies here in the US like Walgreens, Chipotle, and Verizon have been offering this benefit to their employees. I mean, student loan debt is a significant problem here in the
Yeah.
US, and
Yeah.
this is a great benefit.
I would say because I know some people that would rather go to college or go to university elsewhere elsewhere in Europe because it's cheaper than having it in the US. And the fact that these employers are applying equity, they are applying equity to support their employees, but also creating a great way to still invest in your professional development
Mhm.
and then go for a company that values that professional development. So I can see a game changer. And I can also, I'm looking at it sideways to the European companies, like we need something like this because otherwise people are going to go to the US instead of Europe, right? So we need to create something similar in the EU as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, thinking about these particular employers, Walgreens, Chipotle, and Verizon, they all have a lot of frontline workers, people who
Yeah,
don't necessarily make a huge salary,
yeah.
and being able to, for them to be able to access this benefit is really significant.
Yeah, especially now that the pay for college fees is very high.
Hmm.
Then on top of that, you also have the cost of living with inflation as well. We have to create ways where everybody can apply for a study or everybody can go to college or a university where we are opening up. So the fact that they are doing this, I would say to me, that's equity, putting equity in place.
Exactly, exactly. All right. Second story this week comes from Virgin Atlantic Airline, which is raising the bar for accessible travel by partnering with deaf influencers. They tested the airline's new services for deaf and hard of hearing passengers, including British Sign Language trained crew and subtitled in flight entertainment. So, this is all shaping Virgin's Accessibility Advisory Board to create a more inclusive experience for everyone. How about this? I love it.
For me, when you forwarded this story this weekend, and for me, the fact that Virgin has an accessibility advisory board, and I'm just thinking like, wow, so many companies, so many companies. The reason why I'm mentioning is first of all, kudos to Virgin. Um, because you're doing something that many companies are not taking advantage of, not using and applying and including everybody, but also empowering those who are people with a disability, right? I'm part of that. And what makes it what is disheartening is a week ago I read a story about I think a BBC journalist. He was in a wheelchair and was not able to carry himself into on the plane, that he had to crawl towards his seat.
The inhumanity.
And I'm just like, if Virgin can do something humanizing like this, we need to empower people to bring in themselves. And if they need support, bring in accessibility as well. I'm using accessibility support every time that I'm flying. And I am so grateful for the companies and their airports that are having that. So I would say we need to have some kind of a sticker or some kind of a review. I don't know if it exists because I'm new in this space, that we can review all these different companies about the accessibility, right? Because
Mhm.
oftentimes it's dismissed. There is this trend with office buildings where the heavier the door, the better it is. That's
Right.
that's the trend that's happening
Yeah.
now, where I see new office buildings where every door is heavy, and I'm just like, you don't understand how much power I need to grab from my ankle to be even opening the door. And that's
Mm.
because I can walk. What about somebody who's in a wheelchair who doesn't have that strength to just open a door?
Right. Right.
I don't need
Exactly.
I don't need to power lift to open a door. Period.
Fair enough. Good point.
Yeah.
All right. The third story this week comes from the U.S. state of Iowa, where its rest stops are leading the way in accessibility by installing adult sized changing tables for people with disabilities. So these height adjustable tables provide dignity and ease for those needing personal care on the road. So this is a number of states starting to do this now. And these are the types of things that I don't even think about and I completely take for granted, Vivian.
I when I read it, I was just like, this is so simple, but yet I forgot it and I wasn't
Sure.
aware. But also because we have to also give ourselves grace that if you don't encounter or if you don't know somebody within your space who does that, right, who has something like that, who needs something like that, then we can forget. And that's why having the accessibility advisory board on the table where you tick in the boxes of the different accessibility, right? Because I can see somebody who's blind has different needs. Somebody who
Mhm.
is in a wheelchair has different needs. Somebody who's neurodivergent has different needs, right? So when you bring in different people within the advisory board, then they will advise you the best way for you to amplify inclusion in the best way. So for me, this is an eye opener, and I've never seen this on the airports that I've been. So I'm really curious into how this is going to be a game changer, not only for the US, but also worldwide, because we need to empower people to be themselves and bring in the support that they need.
I completely agree. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it continues to roll out.
Hmm.
Okay, the fourth story comes from the National Hockey League here in the US, where Jessica Campbell made history as the first full time female assistant coach with the Seattle Kraken. So she brings her expertise and focus, and she knows that diverse perspectives create better outcomes. I mean, it's amazing that we're still seeing firsts like this, but we got
I
to
was
celebrate them.
I was just about to say, when will we be done with the first? Because I know that it's a male driven sport, right? I know that oftentimes people look towards a man when it comes to coaching or assistant coach. But the fact that we are doing this, and also in the Netherlands, there was also a coach, a female coach, for the first time coaching a men's team. And I'm just thinking, like, when will it be done with the first woman?
Right.
When will it
Right.
be done? Because we women, when we can carry, many women can carry babies. If we can do that, why are we limiting ourselves to not do the same things that men do? I know that men can lift more weight, right? But still, we can we have so much more or equal potential, and we need to create those spaces as well. So I hope that she opens the door for other assistants, for other coaches to pass on through that door as well.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And when that happens, you can maybe
Yeah,
be sure to read about that in 5 things.
exactly.
Okay, the last story this week comes from Spotify, which is sticking with its popular work from anywhere policy. So they just had layoffs, cutting 17% of its staff, but they saw market value soar and retention rates improve because of their flexible work policy, which we know increases diversity. We know that women and people of color and people from traditionally marginalized backgrounds, they experience more microaggressions at work.
Yeah.
So diversity goes up when we have remote work and work from anywhere policies. Love this story.
I mean, I like that the fact that Spotify is doing that, but on top of that, you're mentioning the layovers, right? That wasn't
Mhm.
also, that's also something that's happening in the back.
Yeah,
And it's also a way of, well, so many companies are demanding people to come back. Well,
right.
we here at Spotify, we offer this. But also, there's another reason. I have a financial background, and there's another reason why Spotify is doing this. I think that they are doing this because they want to save money. An office costs a lot of money to
Sure.
maintain, a lot of money. So if they can invest that money into the people, into providing the budget for remote working, they do have that. So many companies don't have that budget. And I remember when Spotify came out with that budget during the lockdown, that was game changing because they created a wave that so many companies copied. So I hope that the companies are honoring and acknowledging that. I'm not saying that the offices should be diminished, but we need to create a flexible benefit for everybody so that everybody can feel empowered and thrive, because there is a different generation in standing up. I'm not only talking about the younger people, because they are also inspiring the older generation as well. And there are so many people who are benefiting from working from home. If I can do more from home, I'm not saying that I'm going to only stay home, but as a neurodivergent person, I value maybe the two times, going to the office and three times at home, so that I can recharge and do some focus work with regarding the work that I do. And people need that. And if you don't offer that, well, maybe the next company will offer that so that they will leave, right? Yeah.
Exactly right. Very well said. All right, Vivian. Well, we're going to move on to the last segment of the show, good
Mhm.
vibes to go. Would you mind sharing a good vibe to go with our listeners?
The good vibes that I want to leave behind is, I want you to think about ways that you can empathize with somebody else, right? I've shared the virtual reality where you can literally walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. But if that is not within your capacity, think about applying active listening. Think about reading other stories, and think about being genuine, asking open questions, and being genuinely interested in somebody else to see things from a different perspective, because your background, your lived experience, and the way that you do things isn't automatically the same for me or somebody else who has a different upbringing or a different background or comes from a different socioeconomic status, right? So I want you to amplify empathy.
I love it. Amplify empathy. That is a great tagline. And I'm going to share a good vibe to go. It's National Disability Employment Awareness Month here in the US. And I'm going to share an article from the World Economic Forum, how neurodiversity in the workplace can drive business success. So check that out as well. Vivian, how can folks get in touch with you?
I would say the easiest way is through LinkedIn. So,
Okay.
Vivian Acquah, you can easily find me and you can see my quirkiness and also see that I'm neurodivergent as well, part of the disability. I'm a person with a disabled ankle as well. And there's so much more to me that meets the eye. So, I want you to snoop around my LinkedIn where you can find a lot of things about me, and reach out. If you want to know more or want some more support, just reach out and I will support you wherever I can.
Awesome. We'll make sure that your LinkedIn link goes in the show notes. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much for being a fabulous guest this week. It's been great having you. And folks, if you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com.
Do
Thanks so
that.
much. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to 5 Things in 15 Minutes. I hope you found yourself inspired by at least one of this week's stories. If you did, would you mind sharing it with a colleague and leaving us a review on your favorite podcasting platform? And if you don't already get my 5 Things newsletter, join at 5thingsdei.com. I'm Bernadette Smith, and I'll see you next week right here for 5 Things in 15 Minutes, bringing good vibes to DEI.